All right, everybody. Pat Leonard here from the New York Daily News and the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast on the Believe Network. And this is Talkin Ball Postgame live from MetLife Stadium. And oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Delayed here a little bit in jumping on the live podcast because what an explosive locker room it was for the Giants after this devastation, this demolition by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 30-7, and it felt worse than that. Malik Nabers fed up, it appears, with the play calling and the game planning on offense, implying that it's on Brian Daboll. Said it's not the quarterback. It's the same as when Daniel Jones was here. Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns talking about how the team was soft today, that the tackling was horrendous, that they were terrible. Darius Slayton saying everyone was bad. Commentary on the coaching staff where players consistently were asked about the coaches, whether there's still confidence and buy-in. Some answers, yes. Some answers, hesitation. And then kind of half comments between I think so, I hope so. Dexter Lawrence's comment about that was, he was asked, is there still a strong connection between the coaches and players? He said, of my knowledge, I think so. I mean, I don't know. We could have more accountability all around, but to my knowledge, I don't see any disconnect. Brian Burns, what he said was, I would like to think so. He said, everybody has all the right answers, but it's not showing up on the field. So usually that translates to whatever the message is, even if people are listening to it, it's not translating, it's not providing results. And that's where it brings us to where we are today, which is at 2-9, 0-6 at home, 6 straight losses for the New York Giants. And in my opinion, as if you are a subscriber here to Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard on the YouTube channel PL on NFL, if you read me in the New York Daily News, if you've been joining us for all of these conversations throughout the season, you know that I have been telling you from the get-go that this was a season that Brian Daboll was coaching for his job, that I thought that Joe Shane's job was on the table at risk as well if this turned into a worst-case scenario, and that I also believe this was going to become a worst-case scenario. I feel like that's where we are right now. I believe that the locker room is not following and listening to and hearing the message that they are getting from Brian Daboll and the coaching staff. I think you can see that not translating on the field. John Mara passed us in the hallway on the way to the locker room, walking briskly late in the fourth quarter. He said he didn't have anything to say as far as no comment. And he said, hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving. Obviously, then Thanksgiving, the Giants will be back on the field. America will be subjected to a New York Giants football game against the Dallas Cowboys in Arlington, Texas. And who knows how bad it could get from here. In my mind, there's a good chance that on a short week, you're retaining the operation as is. You play that game on Thursday, and assuming you lose that game, then there's a good chance that coming out of that Thanksgiving game, I would think that firings and a new coach on the sideline could be on the table as early as that. That's not information. That's not a leak or somebody telling me that that's going to happen. That is me putting 2 and 2 together and projecting it myself based on the information I've had, based on how explosive this locker room was, how fed up the players are. Obviously, the elephant in the room is that Daniel Jones, the quarterback of the Giants, the franchise quarterback, while, the fan base and the team obviously ended up fed up with his inability to get the job done, you heard players this week not support that move. You heard players say they still felt Daniel Jones was the best quarterback for the team. And even though obviously the offense wasn't looking good enough or good at times when Daniel Jones was in the game, and they were still the lowest scoring team in the league coming in, we saw it look even worse in this game once Tommy DeVito goes in. As Dexter Lawrence described it, the defense for Buccaneers was blitzing the shit out of him early on, trying to take advantage of a new quarterback and a new system. Obviously, we know he's the third stringer being promoted to number 1, so that puts Tommy in a bad spot as well. DeVito took some monster hits in this game. The Giants' offense did the defense no favors. The defense did the offense no favors. Daboll also coaching for his job, going for 4th and 1 on his own 37 in the first quarter, down 7-0. The Giants don't get it. The Buccaneers kick a field goal to go up 10-0, and on they go. Late in the fourth quarter, Daboll calling timeouts down 30-7 on the final drive of the game, trying desperately to get more points on the board to make it look a little bit better, because 30-13 or 30-14 or 30-15 looks better on the stat sheet than 30-7. But DeVito's final passes sail over Darius Slayton's head, and we are where we are at this point. And where we are, in my opinion, is at the end. Regardless of when John Mara and Steve Tisch make this decision, the amount of comments and the frustration coming out of the locker room, Dexter Lawrence saying that his frustration is probably at a 10 out of 10. And even Lawrence, frankly, not showing the same kind of finish on some plays that you're used to seeing, just the frustration showing on the field. There was a moment today when Dexter, after the Buccaneers scored one of their touchdowns in the first half, jogs over to the sideline and was so frustrated. I asked him about it after the game. He said he was frustrated and trying to keep composed. He was standing by himself with his hands on both sides of his helmet, rocking back and forth, seemingly, either repeating something to himself, a mantra, or just trying to take a moment to kind of zero in on, like, listen, I'm just here. I'm nowhere else. To block out the noise and try to compose himself. But it was the clear picture of somebody who was really struggling to keep it together. And, these guys who are the leaders in the locker room, the Dexter Lawrences, the Brian Burns, they're trying to put a good face on it. They're trying to put a better face on it. But, you saw from Nabers to Lawrence to Burns to Slayton to Jermaine Illuminor, a lot of comments in this locker room today that point towards a team that is no longer responding. Now, there were guys playing and putting good football on tape. A guy who stuck out to me was Micah McFadden on defense. Funny enough, even last year, remember, like at the start of the season when they weren't ready to play for that game in Dallas, it was like Micah was the only guy ready to play. Very interesting. Playing through a heel injury as well in this game. But, just discouraging and classic Giants stuff in the sense that in the second half, they finally get a drive going. They finally target Malik Nabers, who said essentially, like, why are you targeting me for the first time in the second half when we're down 30-0? What am I going to do then? He said that. Nabers completely fed up. But you target him, you move the ball, you get the ball down in the red zone. Daboll calls a wildcat to Tyrone Tracy Jr., who fumbles. And the Buccaneers recover. So even in a moment where it feels like the Giants might build something, they shoot themselves in the foot, they make a mistake. This is what bad football teams do, right? Sometimes it's a blowout. Sometimes on a certain drive, you're winning on certain downs. And then it simply comes down to, that in the end, bad teams in close situations, whether it's close games, close situations, whatever, they make the wrong play, they make a bad play, they make a mistake, a critical mental error, whatever it is. It was so easy, though, for Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers offense today. The Giants' vaunted pass rush now. Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, those guys. Thibodeau back in the lineup. The Giants' pass rush has one sack in the last 3 games. No sacks today of Baker Mayfield. Mayfield's final stat line for this game, 294 passing yards and 29 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Bucky Irving, Rashad White, and Sean Tucker, all with rushing touchdowns there. And then obviously be remiss if I didn't mention Baker Mayfield, and this is really the icing on the cake. Baker Mayfield with the Tommy Cutlets, the double DeVito, as I call it, taunting the entire MetLife Stadium crowd, potentially standing for his friend and former Giant Sterling Shepard, who had 5 catches for 16 yards in this game, dropped what could have been a touchdown pass to rub it in the Giants' faces. But really, that was Mayfield taunting the Giants as a joke, taunting them for, getting rid of good players, good people, guys like Saquon Barkley, Sterling Shepard. Mayfield obviously not a fan of Daniel Jones, as he's been on the record saying that. But to me, I viewed this as bigger than just him celebrating a touchdown or even mocking DeVito personally. I think he was mocking the spectacle, the circus, and the joke that the Giants were as an opponent on this day. Thanks for sticking it out with me. Thanks for being here, Giants and NFL fans. And we could talk more than just the Giants' dismay, dysfunction, and dismal reality. If you want to know what I think is going to happen here, I think there's a good chance on a short week that nothing happens prior to the Cowboys game. But after that, all bets are off. I would say that's probably a fair assumption. Really hard to, if you own a team like this and you watch a performance like this in front of your home crowd and you're winless at home and you can't score points and you're the lowest scoring team in the league. And I heard my colleague Connor Hughes over at SNY, he was doing some research on the Giants' inability to score, and he calculated that their points per game average, which is now below 15 at 14 and change, is at the moment, it would be the lowest average scoring for a Giants offense in the last 25 years. So the roster isn't good enough. The play calling and the coaching isn't good enough. And so that's where we stand. With that, I really appreciate everybody who's here. I see some super chats rolling in. Those comments and questions will be addressed first. Thank you so much for being here with me here on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. Good reminders to start here. Let's see. Patrick Evans, for example, says, hit that sub and like button. Really appreciate you saying that, Patrick. That's a good reminder. Please subscribe. Please also hit the like button while we are live. This tells the YouTube algorithm to send out to the airwaves, to people on YouTube, to Giants fans everywhere. If you don't know what we're doing here, we do post-game lives after every Giants game from the game. On the off chance that I'm not at the game, like the Germany game, I'm still going live after the game, working the phones, working my sources, telling you what I see and know. And at least this season have been pretty good at projecting and predicting what's coming next and reporting on injuries and where these players stand as a whole. Obviously, the most important thing is bringing to you what I hear and see from the locker room, right? Because that is what speaks most to, exactly where this team stands, whether they're going to be able to pick themselves up and play differently and give a different type of, let's call it, effort, right? Now, Malik Nabers said they were soft as F. Dexter Lawrence called them soft today. And Brian Burns said everybody was bad in this game. It's about pride. It's about want to. There was a lot of frustration. Haven't seen frustration in their locker room like this in a long time. Darius Slayton, I thought, had an interesting comment about the Daniel Jones, did the locker room, were there lingering effects from that situation? And he said, he doesn't think that's the reason they came out and got beat this way. But he said at the end of the day, DJ wasn't on the field today. He had no effect on how well the people that were out there did their jobs. And at the end of the day, the people who play today did a terrible job. And that's why we got beat. So in other words, don't connect this man's name to this terrible performance is what he was saying there. And hard to disagree with Darius Slayton, given everything that we saw. So I'm going to tell you guys about our sponsors really quickly, and then I am going to get to the super chats first and continue through the queue. Looks like our first one is going to be Chris Spires, and then Steve Keys, and then DH. So I'm going to get to all of those first. Before that, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor, MyBookie. So here's what you guys got to do. Please, if you support this channel and you love what we do, please open an account on MyBookie. Go to the link in my profiles, whether it's PL on NFL, my accounts on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Threads, or on Twitter, PLeonardNYDN. Click on that link, make your first deposit, and if you use the promo code PATSPICKS, you get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000, plus a $10 casino chip to play with in the MyBookie casino. But really important to support MyBookie because that supports the podcast. And the reason why I'm telling you to go support me there is because we're hitting on bets. Like today, here's some picks I gave out. My 3 Pats picks. Buccaneers -6 at the Giants was my best bet. That hit. Lions -7.5 at the Colts. That hit. And right now, we're waiting to see how the Denver Broncos shake out against the Las Vegas Raiders. It's only a 3-point game with the Broncos up 3 at the moment, but we're looking at Denver having a chance here to close out and make me a perfect 3-0 on my Pats picks this week if they can cover 5.5 at the Raiders. I also told you Bucs to win the first quarter. I told you Bucs by 15 plus points in this game at plus 220. And so didn't hit on some of my props like over 7.5 first quarter points. And looks like Cade Otton let me down. The Buccaneers tight end had a drop and an overthrow by Baker Mayfield. But we're hitting on half our props as we go with those long shot props, our giant sprinkles, and going 3-0 likely on Pat's picks if the Broncos can hold up their end. Plus, pick every game against the spread every week for the New York Daily News and way above 500 there. Looks like I am now 8-3-1 in my best bets for the Daily News every week. So all that is to say, my bookie is the place to go. Tail those picks and my bets, and you will be winning money this football season. My bookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants, and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And last but not least, brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want to make a quick cup and skip the lines. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get an exclusive offer of 80% off your first order. All right, let's start with the super chats, and then we will get back into the queue. Thank you for everybody who was here early, everyone who's joining now, everyone who's joined up. My goal here is always to give you the most honest and direct and insightful information and takes and opinions that I have on the Giants and on the NFL. All right. Chris Spires checks in with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Chris. He says, I want to bring the GM and coach back, but I'm afraid you have to blow it up. I think you speak for the Giants there, Chris. You know, John Mara and Steve Tisch. Steve Tisch, we haven't heard from him, which has been strange. Haven't heard from the Tisch family. However, I do believe that, or not believe, I know, I can tell you that throughout this season, even when I was sitting there in Washington in week 2 asking Brian Daboll if he was concerned about losing his job, that was based on information that he was coaching for his job, that he was in that scenario if it kept getting worse. And I can tell you at that moment, you know, internally, even though it was headed that way, if they kept losing, obviously they win against Cleveland, so he staves it off a little bit. But internally, the preference is not to blow it up again, as much as they keep doing that every 2 years or in the middle of the second season. There has been a really strong effort from the Giants. If you've noticed the way that they've been covered and the things that you've heard from national reporters, they're really trying to stand behind as loudly as they can through leaks or through conversations or through just insistence that they believe in Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll and they don't want to tear it up. And that is their preference, right? But to me, when you see poor game management, poor coaching, poor play calling, worst offense in the league, scapegoating Daniel Jones when obviously the entire operation is bad, the roster is bad, the roster has gotten worse, right? It's not a matter of opinion. Like, see, that's where I come down on this right now, is that, you know, you could articulate whatever opinion you want about, or you can make individual points about a positive here and there, like a pass breakup by Tyler Nubin, for example, today was one nice play. You had some runs by Tyrone Tracy Jr., right? You had Malik Nabers for a few plays once he got targeted, making some nice catches. Although he did have a fumble or an incompletion that they ruled as a fumble that stayed with the Giants. Theo Johnson, a catch and a drop. whatever the case may be. But there are so few and far between positives, especially when you talk about carryover and things that you can really hang your hat on and use as evidence that this is headed in the right direction. I mean, one message that I thought was really strange to hear from a couple of the players, namely Lawrence and Burns, that you can tell is coming from the coaching staff and from higher ups, is that this is a, quote, process. And they understand this is a process, and they're being sold internally. Look how young we are on defense, right? Look how young we are. These guys are going to have growing pains. Stick with us. It almost sounds like that's the message to the veterans like a Burns and a Lawrence who are fed up and really frustrated. That's the message of stick with us. It's going to get better. We're building something to next year. Players don't want to hear that, especially, listen, let's face it. If the Giants aren't tanking, how would it look any different if they were? This is what a tank looks like. John Mara isn't about tanking. He doesn't believe in it. He says he doesn't believe in it, right? He says he would never do it. It's about the integrity of the game. But this is what it would look like if you were. And putting DeVito in over Drew Lock, obviously, if this was their idea that it was going to jumpstart the offense, horrendous decision. And if the idea was that you were going to lose and get a high draft pick, then that's unacceptable too, to the players, to the locker room. And so, to your point, Chris, to round it out, ownership doesn't want to make a decision or, to make a change. But Shane and Daboll are leaving them very little choice, is how I see it. Steve checks in with $5. Shane Bowen may not make it past Thanksgiving talking about your hot seats. Yeah, I mean, I would agree, except, what are we doing if we're firing Shane Bowen? Wink Martindale left because of the dysfunctional operation that Daboll was running. And so you ran essentially your best coach out the door because your head coach and your operation was terrible. And so then nobody really wants the job. So you hire like the fourth or fifth choice. And then Shane Bowen has tried to be accountable, but nobody was sitting here telling you like Shane Bowen was going to come in and fix the defense. Anybody who thought that, I think, was just ignoring the pedigree that Martindale had and the effectiveness he had. And like I said, Bowen has been mostly accountable publicly. What scared me was hearing him say today, this week leading into the game, he cited as one reason they don't have as many turnovers. He said, well, when you play man, it's hard because you have your back to the ball. Wink Martindale got criticized for playing too much man-to-man, and the Giants tied for the league lead with 31 takeaways last year. That just reflects a lack of understanding of football, I think, to be able to say that. But my point is, Shane Bowen is not the problem. Picking off people left and right, Daniel Jones, and, like even people today complaining about a guy like Deonte Banks. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing complaining about Deonte Banks when there's 4 rushing touchdowns for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? And again, the big plays, the explosive runs start with gaping holes on the offensive line and defensive line, And this was a Bucs offensive line that didn't have Tristan Wirfs, their best player. DH says, Pat, do you think this franchise needs established, experienced leadership at both head coach and GM? First-time head coach and GM in this market for the past 10 years is not working. DH, I think that's a really good point. I think at the very least, DH, you need at least one of those two people to be someone who has experience. And also with experience, what I'm talking about when I say experience also is, self-confidence, but not arrogance, but confidence enough to handle yourself directly and honestly with the New York market and the media, and to be somebody who does not shy away from accountability and knows how to operate. I think what Shane and Daboll have struggled with is while they were trying to build, there's been a lot of ego involved. There's been a lot of trying to prove yourself right over somebody else wrong. rather than stepping away from it. It's almost like getting too close to it and making it personal rather than truly keeping things as business decisions, treating people the right way rather than saying things that are going to, make guys view your decisions as vendetta driven or agenda driven rather than something that's best. Also, obviously, Hard Knocks did not reflect well as far as, I say this a lot on here, and I know some people, it's hard to believe at certain points because you assume that there's more competence happening. But, I thought Hard Knocks showed that there was more fly by the seat of your pants decision-making when it comes to the roster and team building than people would have imagined. Forget what you think about keeping Saquon or not, or who they signed and who they didn't, right? I'm not talking about Saquon necessarily, but I think what you saw there was kind of like case by case kind of, point and shoot decisions on, well, if this happens, then maybe we'll go here instead. And, we don't want to do this because X, Y, and Z. And then in the Saquon situation, hearing from one of your lieutenants and Chris Rossetti, like, are we sure we want to do this and not this? And, getting good advice from one of your lieutenants and Joe Shane, and then still going the other way and just kind of ignoring it because you have your own ideas that don't necessarily align with anything other than, hey, well, I believe in positional value, right? So, I think there's something to be said for also when you're the leader, when you're at the head of the table and at the head of the room as a general manager or a coach when it comes to leading an NFL franchise, especially in New York, people need to look at you and believe that you're taking them to the right place in the right direction and that you're confident in your operation and that you're not a finger pointer, but you instill confidence in your players by putting them in a good position, by not overreacting to what you see on Twitter or paying so much attention to the narrative and what reporters are saying about you and participating so much in trying to craft the team's version of the truth that you're just doing just as much work on that as you are on actually building the team. You can't work here if you have thin skin. You can't work here if the noise gets to you to the point that it impacts your job in a negative way. I can tell you firsthand from being a reporter here, there are times where the trolling on social media, where the comments from people, whether it's in emails, on chats like this, or on Twitter, they get to you and they can really impact your ability to see or think clearly at times because it can hurt. It's one of those things where this is what we've signed up for. So when you're in the public eye, that accountability and that extra responsibility of, putting yourself out there and then standing behind what you say, what you write, what you report, what you predict, what you say about people, how you criticize, all of that matters, right? And so you have to stand behind it. And if you can't weather the storm, if you can't weather those moments, when you're a fledgling coach, general manager who are taking, way more criticism than even someone like I am, if you listen to it and if you let it dictate how you operate, then you're not going to survive. And I think that's what there is to be said for DH on experience. Now, you could have a situation where, let's just hypothetically say you brought in an experienced general manager, but you hired a first-time head coach like a Ben Johnson, right? Now, I don't know if Ben Johnson would be a guy who would love to work in New York and could handle New York as a coach being there at the podium every day. That's an important part of it, right? Like with a Ben McAdoo, he was a really good offensive mind, even had a good first season. He struggled with the public optics, podium every day side of it. He's not, wasn't like a people person in that way. So sometimes you have that. But you could, in this situation, have an experienced general manager who just knows how to build a team. And then you have a coach who can really improve your offense and be an expert on an important side of the ball like that. Or on the flip side, if you have a GM who's working through things, but you have a Mike Tomlin-esque coach who can really keep accountability and discipline with your locker room, then maybe that can balance out the growing pains that the general manager is having. I think really where it's translated most, though, too, on the rookie side of general manager and coach with Shane and Daboll has been the relationship side. Daboll is a great guy for a player to, be buddy with and talk to as a friend. But the way that this operation works, there's not enough guys held accountable. And then on the Shane side, you just have too many players leaving or being run out the door, feeling like they weren't treated well, like they weren't given the proper respect, and like the team is getting rid of good players, and that there are reasons other than merit why those things are happening. And so, that's why there's eroded trust in the locker room. And DH, you get us, you're helping us get started here on a great foot in this conversation. I know there's a long-winded answer, but I hope it was, I hope it reflected, and answered your question. GM Pedroza says Daboll losing the locker room, Nabers gum chewing was cringe. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Talk about unprofessional looking. Obviously, I love to chew gum. I chew gum all the time, all day, especially when I'm, doing like right now, doing that intermittent fasting. So there's times where I'm starving and I'm chewing tons of gum, so I'm not eating more food, and drinking lots of coffee. Estate 98, shout out. But no, that it was a bad look all around. Shocking quotes from Malik Nabers there. All right. Daniel says Giants state media propaganda blaming everything on the defense in the post-game powder keg. Yeah, you could see that from a mile away, right? Blaming it on the defense. So let me read you some stats. The Giants offense scoreless in the first half for the third time this season, including 2 straight games, both in Germany and here. Also would have been 4 times if they didn't get that last-second field goal or that late field goal in the first half against the Eagles. They had 3 points against the Eagles. So they've actually had 3 shutout first halves, and they've also had 5 first halves in their 11 games where they've had 3 points or less. 5 of their 11 games. Novice says, but yeah, the state media stuff, it's too much. Listen, I don't like spending a lot of our conversations here dumping on other people, right? I don't want people spending their time dumping on me and trashing my coverage and taking shots like that. Like, I think that's ugly. And frankly, I think it is counterproductive. Like, I think you guys as fans, I think you're smart enough to follow what everybody says and writes and does, and, decide who is giving you the best, most reliable information, who is bringing it to you straight, who is coming to you with as little of an agenda as possible, trying to be as objective as they can. And, it's your prerogative who you cover or who you follow, who you listen to, who you read, and who you trust the most. But I thank all of you who are here because I do believe that even though it's been tough lately and even though these conversations are hard, I do think that I've been sharing the most accurate read of this team and this organization with you. Novice says that performance today was the players telling the world how they feel about the front office and coaches. They quit, and this regime has to be over. I agree. Thank you for the super chat. Gerald says, Pat, what is your thought on if they dismiss current GM and head coach and promoted Brandon Brown and Kafka respectfully? You mean for the rest of the season? I mean, you could interim them for the rest of the season. I could understand that. I would not understand if they were replacements next year, right? Because I think Kafka, I think when he's able to get out of here, he's out of here. And I think that, he was essentially embarrassed and had all of his power and say-so and involvement stripped away. And, then I have Brandon Brown, who, the way I see it with Brandon Brown, he has been party to everything that has happened here. I think I think the way I see it is Brandon Brown is as much a part of what Joe Schoen has done as anybody. I mean, he's been directly involved with all of their decisions. Jim says, Pat, prepare for new members in the chat blaming you. No worries. I don't, I think we all know that. Listen, best way I could put that, and this will answer all of that. Whether I was sitting here at MetLife Stadium today or not, the Giants still would have lost 30-7 and been embarrassed by the Buccaneers. But Jim, welcome back. Thank you. Most illest, what's up? Says Daboll told Nabers that DeVito will throw the ball before you get out of your break. A clear shot at Jones. What a clown he is, and the locker room has quit on him. Yeah, that was a telling comment by Nabers, right? It did seem like that's what he was being told. John says, absolutely love the crickets on Twitter today. All the people who blamed Daniel Jones saying he was the main problem and he held the team back. Clearly, it's Daboll. And clearly, based on how the players reacted and are continuing to talk about Daniel, and it's not the quarterback, we all see what they're saying. We all hear them. Anybody who doesn't hear that is obviously, just ignoring it. Patrick Evans checks in with a $50 super chat. Patrick, thank you so much, man. Thank you. Holy cow. Wow. I really appreciate that, Patrick. I really appreciate that. Sincerely. That is, man. What we are building here on the Believe Network and on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast on the YouTube channel, it's PL and on NFL. If you're not a subscriber yet, please do. If you're listening to the audio version on Apple or Spotify, thanks for being here. And please join us next time on our YouTube channel for our live chat. We'll try to squeeze another one in before the Giants play next on Thanksgiving. Not sure if I will or not. Probably depends on if there's news, but I'll let you guys know, keep you updated on social media. Regardless, we'll do one on Thanksgiving after the Giants play the Cowboys for sure. But so what Patrick says is, Pat, appreciated all your hard work and reporting. I think they should get rid of Schoen before Daboll. He got rid of two of the Giants' leaders, Barkley and McKinney. This team lacks leadership on both sides of the ball. And how about this? Something to keep an eye on here on Monday as far as when this change happened. So, number one, Teddy Bruschi on ESPN NFL Countdown, they had a segment today. And Teddy Bruschi basically said that when they let Saquon Barkley go, when Joe Schoen let Saquon Barkley go, he let the culture of the Giants go out of the building. And it wasn't just about on the field. And that's essentially what Darius Slayton said to me the other day. He said Saquon Barkley's role here was bigger than football. And Saquon's one of the players we're talking about and one of the mistakes they're talking about. But that hits the nail on the head as accurately as anybody can about, the way that they misjudge things here with this regime. Also, Stephen A. Smith. Ooh, boy. So Stephen A. Smith ripped into the Giants saying that they called ESPN and complained about Ellie Duncan ripping Daniel Jones. And Ellie Duncan, in all honesty, obviously, that was in poor taste, what she said about Daniel mocking him. That was stupid. But it was unprofessional. It was basically somebody who thought, hey, everyone's dumping on Daniel Jones. I can too. And, it was wrong. But calling and ripping the ESPN and complaining about how the Giants are being covered, allegedly, according to Stephen A. Smith, that did not surprise me to hear that, for Stephen A. to say that. Now, obviously, we've seen reports since saying that the Giants did no such thing, did not call ESPN or talk to ESPN and complain, and that Stephen A. essentially, quote, made that up. I would say, and listen, I genuinely am serious when I say this. I don't usually watch those debate shows. I hear about them. I watch the clips on social media is what I do. If something goes viral, I watch it, right? And if I know it's Giants or NFL related and it's relevant, I go find it. That is appointment viewing. That will be appointment viewing on Monday, November 25th. Stephen A. Smith. responding to the Giants alleging that he made that up, especially after this game. Patrick, thank you so much for that $50. Really appreciate that. Reminder here, at Talkin Ball Live, we are brought to you by MyBookie, Boom Chaga, and Estate 98 Coffee. MyBookie, go to their link in my social media profiles, including on my YouTube channel right here. Go to the profile, click the link, make your first deposit, and you'll get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000, plus a $10 casino chip. All you got to do, make that first deposit, use the promo code PATSPICKS, PATSPICKS. And doing that, you'll be able to tail my picks, win money this football season with MyBookie. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. It has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Use the code TalkinBall25 on a subscribe and save order on boomchaga.com, and you'll get 25% off. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And Estate 98 Coffee, specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want a quick cup and skip the lines. Takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 hot or iced coffee. Great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Estate98.com/talkinball for your exclusive 80% off your first order. Keith says the DJ situation has conned people into overlooking the mismanagement of personnel and relationships. A new quarterback isn't going to set the edge or stuff a run. Really well said, Keith, there. Yep, exactly. The mismanagement of personnel. How about this? And listen, I told Tyrone Tracy Jr. in the locker room as he walked out, I said, keep your head up. You're a good player, right? But let's face it, this idea that, in the Saquon Barkley conversation, the offense conversation, this idea that, hey, Shane was right. Look, he got Tyrone Tracy Jr. They're great at running back, right? He did the right thing. Now, this is a rookie who in the last 2 games has basically 3 turnovers, 2 fumbles lost, and a drop pass for an interception. Listen, he's not supposed to carry the team. He's a 5th-round running back. He looks like a good pick for a 5th rounder, right? That's true. Love the kid, love the player. I think he can be a good piece. But again, to say that this organization and this front office has improved this roster and improved this team, it's not happening. It is regressing, and is regressing because of the personnel, and is regressing because of mismanagement of those relationships, like you said. Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard, Nick McLeod, Nick Gates, and on and on, really. All right, let's see who's next in the queue. I want to make sure I don't miss any super chats. No Mets says, Pat, what up? Happy Sunday. No Mets, always a pleasure having you here. Got a lot of super chatters weighing in, a lot of loyal talking ballers. Kyler says, first with 5:50 left in the third because I really don't give a blank. Wow. Kyler jumped in with almost 6 minutes left in the third quarter because he was tired of it right off the bat. That's good. He says, this team has checked out, clearly doesn't care, so why should I? Clearly, they don't want to play for Brian Daboll. I don't know if he survives. Kyler reminds everybody to like and subscribe also, just like Patrick did. Thank you for that reminder, Kyler. He says, Pat, why does other Giants content target you? The last guy in the chat lied, but Big Blue Banter called you out by name, saying you were treating Daniel Jones like a Hall of Famer. To be honest, Kyler, I think that I tend to be first on strong opinions and sometimes or oftentimes critical strong opinions. And listen, I've been wrong before. Obviously, I'm not saying I'm right all the time or whatever, but I do think that, you stick your neck out. And so especially when you don't follow the crowd and you're doing your own thing, people tend to be skeptical. What I don't understand is I feel like I steer the fan base in the right direction to where things are going or where they are, even though it's not popularly known. So I do think, Kyler, that over the course of the months and the years that I've been doing this and that as we continue to go, I do think people understand that not agenda driven. It's not. I have nothing against the Giants. I have nothing against Coach X or Player X or GM X. I am reporting what is happening. And so I think covering the Giants during a time of a lot of losing, and the way the world is now, people rush to blame the media often before they look at the actual issues that they're talking about. So I think all of those things kind of go into the pot and that happens. But, I don't mind. Like I said, it gives, it can be tough. There are tough times, for sure. Even for me, like listening to the noise, people ripping me or in my comments or, making it personal. That's what I would say is that most things I don't mind. The only thing I mind is when people make things personal. By the way, I wasn't at Jermaine Illuminor's locker, but listen to this quote. So Jordan Ronan just posted his story on ESPN. And a lot of our quotes, obviously, the same from Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Darius Slayton, Malik Nabers, etc. Listen to this one from Jermaine Illuminor. I personally don't think everybody is giving 100%. Wow. I personally don't think everybody is giving 100%. What do you guys think of that comment? That is something else to hear. And so listen, that's what I'm saying too. Like when Jermaine Illuminor says, I don't think everyone's giving 100% on the team, right? What does it matter what I say? Right? Better yet, if I were to tell you everything was fine, as a starter on the offense is telling you that everyone's not giving 100%. If I were telling you everything's fine and then you heard Jermaine Illuminor said that, you'd be like, I can't trust Pat. He's not telling me what's actually going on, right? A novice of things says, any good off the record quote from the locker room? You mean background? Yeah. So one person used the word ugly to me about how things are. Really this is a situation where if the team was able to get a result, I think they could all lie to themselves about being able to get to the finish line here. But the constant losses piling up and how bad it is and how, you have guys saying people aren't trying 100%. That's where we're at. But ugly was a word. I would tell you this too. The Dallas trip is going to be a tough one. I don't know how to say it exactly, but it's not going to be I don't think the Dallas game is going to be a pleasant experience. I don't sense confidence from anybody here that their results are going to look any different. That's what I don't sense that. So yeah, so this is how I work, just so you guys know. We're live right now on Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard live post-game from MetLife Stadium. And I've already filed my story for the New York Daily News. Like I said, I had a lot of good quotes. I did not hear Jermaine Illuminor say that. So I do need to. It is on me. Even though it wasn't my quote, I do need to add that quote to my story and give credit to ESPN and Jordan because, of course, for you, the fans, you pick up the New York Daily News and you're reading it. And yes, I want to be unique and give you my take on things and my reporting. So you try to obviously get everything yourself and avoid having to credit people. But the bottom line is, that is arguably the biggest quote out of the locker room, right? Along with the neighbor stuff. And so to put it in there, he said, according to ESPN, it's got to be in there. It doesn't matter who it's according to. It tells you, the fan, the most realistic reflection of what's happening with the Giants, right? So that's why it belongs in there. So I'm putting it in my story right now. So John Mara walked briskly past us in the fourth quarter declined comments, said have a happy Thanksgiving. The players had a lot to say, though, when the frustrated locker room opened. I personally don't think everybody is giving 100%, said left tackle Jermaine Illuminor, according to ESPN. And then I go into Malik Nabers saying they're soft as F. He's tired of losing, and implied that Daboll's game plan and play calling were the problem. So, adding that to the story. And let's continue in our super chat here. So, Novice, yeah, I hope that clarifies things. The ugly, the Jermaine Illuminor quote. Wow. Okay, let's see. Kyle says, Pat, it was very clear that it would take a catastrophe for this regime to be let go. It's unfolding right before our eyes. Unfortunately, they're done. And but that's what I'm saying is like, in all fairness, I know you needed to see it to say, oh, it is going to be a catastrophe, but based on the knowledge of the quality of personnel evaluations or lack thereof, the quality of coaching and lack thereof, the dysfunctional nature of their operation, the fly by the seat of their pants, no plan, decisions all isolated, not part of a bigger picture, lack of accountability. This all adds up to what I was telling you was coming. But yeah, Kyle, I agree with you 100%. Paulo says, have you spoken to people in other organizations, whether front office or players, on what's the perceptions of the Giants recently? Yes. There are people in other organizations who see some talent here, namely, there are people around the league love Nabers as a talent, right? Let's see. Brian Burns is respected. I mean, people don't think that he's the kind of pass rusher that commands the salary the Giants gave him, but they respect him as a player. Dexter Lawrence is revered as one of the best in the league at his position. Bobby Okereke obviously is a season removed from a big time year. Even though it hasn't happened this year. Frankly, even though the drafts haven't been good around here, Micah McFadden, you looked at a day like today, not a perfect player, but in the role, if you have him in the proper role, like Micah can give you something, especially as a late round pick. So there are people around the league who look at this roster and they say, hey, there's some talent I like here, some players I like here. And obviously everybody knows that the Giants need to seek a great quarterback, just like all the teams that don't have one. But I think the biggest sense people around the league have and criticism they have that fans maybe don't understand is that, Shane's personnel chops, his lack of consistency in making the big decisions, the Saquon Barkley decision, not one that people around the league agreed with or fully understood. Very low opinions of the Giants from people around the league after watching Hard Knocks and how they made those decisions and kind of the revolving doors of why they did certain things and didn't do other things. And so, that became very clear. I think Daboll's game management is poor situational football. And also, Daboll did great work with Josh Allen, but he is not revered as an offensive mind around the league or as a head coach and leader of men the way that you might think based on his success in 2022. So those are some of the broader strokes points that I would say. Let's see. Kyler says of Blue Banter, when simply all you said was Jones wasn't treated the best on his exit isn't the sole problem. I was a fan of Banter, but they are just ridiculous using the whine voice mocking you. Very unmanly. Yeah, no, that's strange. Well, especially, listen, like I said, if you don't want to hear me say it, you could just listen to the players say it. They're essentially saying what I said. Where do you think I'm getting this information from? Where do you think I'm telling you why this is the case, right? When you go into a season with Dimes and DeVito as your QBs, you will fail every time, says Barbara. Patrick says, I truly believe the reason why Daboll put in DeVito is because they are soft tanking. They look like they're tanking, tell you that. Undefined says they just got destroyed by a team with 4 wins. What a disaster Daboll is. Yep, That's what, like somebody said to me earlier, oh, they played the Saints in a couple of weeks. They're not very good. I said, neither are the Bucs. George says, well, maybe it was not Daniel Jones. From my experience, Pat, they could have had Tom Brady on the Giants. They still would have struggled. Daniel Jones was never given a chance. 3 different coordinators. One thing, Pat, Tommy DeVito will not make it through the season. He's going to get pounded every game, says George. Peterstown says, guess it was all Daniel Jones after all, and rolls his eyes. Barbara says, no way Dable or Bowen can survive this. O-line is still worst in the league. Not sure any quarterback is going to survive behind that line. Kyler says, will Bowen be the first scapegoat? Stop the run was his attribute, I guess. LOL. Bill B as GM. Tim McDonald steps up more. Wink as DC. Ben Johnson, head coach. Mariota as vet QB. I love the idea of bringing Wink back. Love it, Kyler. I agree with that as well. I think that your first call has to be to Belichick as a GM. But, if he obviously has his own people and brings in his own operation. So you're mixing and matching some people there that I think maybe all don't fit together into the same regime and structure. But I will say that I like the idea of getting a veteran and somebody like Martindale in who knows the players, knows the area. And really, I mean, this team was really good in large part because he was excellent at helping manage the games on the defensive side of the ball. Joey B says, sad state of affairs for our team, man. DeVito got crushed so many times today, and our defense is Swiss cheese. I was rooting for the Bucs and not ashamed to admit I want the tank. Brett says, Pat, if you can tell Daboll that Black Friday is approaching and he can get a deal on some new luggage, that would be great. Times are tough. Thanks. Well said, Brett. Iconic says, Pat, is this getting closer to an in-season blow-up, specifically if Thanksgiving looks like this? Yeah, my guess is probably after Thanksgiving, assuming they lose to the Cowboys on a short week, I guess you're probably not making changes. But like I said, really interested to see what Stephen A. comes out with on Monday and how much heat the Giants continue to take publicly. They were torn to shreds Sunday morning as well. And even Bill Cowher at halftime, Bill Cowher on CBS said that the Giants looked, quote, uninspired, the players. Undefined says, I think it's getting obvious that Wink was responsible for more wins than Daboll. Undefined. Sounding like someone who knows football is what that is. Because from a game management standpoint, how could you argue with that? Also, the blame game, right? This was part of the reason you saw my story on what led to Martindale's departure. Well, part of what led to it was you have losses where the offense can't score. And yeah, the defense obviously makes mistakes and isn't perfect, but the defense has been carrying your team, forcing turnovers, and the offense is scoring, 7, 10, 12, 13 points. And, then after games or during games, you're hearing like finger pointed at the defense. And this is what I reported coming out of the bye week. I reported this week leading into this Bucs game that Daboll and the coaches were ratcheting up the pressure on the defense to essentially to play perfectly, to make fewer mistakes, to stop allowing explosive plays. And from a defensive point of view, they have to take accountability and try to be better because they have to be better. But also in the back of your mind, it's like, we're not scoring any points, so you need me to play perfectly, right? So not easy to keep a locker room believing in you when that is how you're treating the team and that is how you're dispersing, blame and accountability. So, let's see. Timothy says this team is not functional. I'm not sure what the answer is anymore. I was not in favor of firing the current regime, but things are being handled so poorly, maybe it's time. Hate to be reactionary. No, I agree. All right, let's see. Barb says, Nabers said all we need to know. It's not the quarterback he's implying, it's the coach. Exactly. All right, let's see. Barbara says, just lose out at this point and clean house after the season. Shane and Daboll and lots of these players. No one is off limits. George says, Giants getting me tight. You got number one receiver in Nabers, and they start giving him the ball when they're down 30-0. He's right. What he's saying, they're getting the same results. Rick says, today is the best day of my life. Can't wait to see how the Daboll apologists spin this one. Saw people point out how Nabers didn't post for Daniel Jones. Wonder what they'll say about his post-game comments. Agree. Alex says, what a joke Daboll is. He created a dysfunctional coaching staff last year, and as we see, it's a clown show this year. General manager and head coach have lost the locker room. Mara, are you watching your revenue leave? Yeah, and the parking lots were pretty empty today. The seats filled up a little bit better than I expected them to be honest, but the booze started pretty early, and by mid-third quarter, people were heading for the hills, as they say. It was ugly. All right, let's see. Patrick with another super chat. Wow, Patrick, thank you. He says, Pat, why is Daboll not using his best weapon, Nabers, more often? Worst points per game, and yet he doesn't target him until the second half. I don't know. I put out this long post at the beginning of the game, like actually before the game started, and I'll read it to you guys because I think this is important. Let's see. So I did some quick research based on what I was watching in the Giants' last few games, and it seemed clear to me that for some reason, even though people weren't really talking about it, it seemed like Nabers was not getting involved in games early enough. So I looked it up, and in the last 4 games, the Giants' last 4 games, he had a total, right? Okay, so this is the Giants' games against, let's see. The Giants' games against the Eagles, Steelers, Commanders, and Panthers, okay? Eagles, Steelers, Commanders, and Panthers. Nabers' stats were, in the first quarter of those 4 games, 1 total catch for 4 total targets and 13 yards. So 1 catch on 4 targets for 13 yards in 4 games in the first quarter of those games. He had 1 catch versus the Eagles in the first quarter on 2 targets for 13 yards. Then against the Steelers, no catches, 1 target. Commanders, no catches, 0 targets. Carolina, no catches, 1 target. And now this week against the Buccaneers, he has no catches, no targets. How is it possible that Daboll and the coaches and that Joe Shane even involved in this operation, how is it possible they can't get him targets? Forget the catches even. This is what Nabers is saying. Nabers, obviously, he wants catches. Forget the catches, though. What about targets? What about attempts to get him the ball, right? What about being able to protect your quarterback for longer than a half a second in order to try to get him the ball? What about offensive scheme that puts your team at an advantage? So that's why Nabers is pissed. All right, let's see. Patrick, thank you again. Really appreciate that. Looks like we got another super chat here. Joey B says, Pat, who can we cut and get rid of? What's their lost cap room we can make happen for the best season for a clean slate? Team doesn't trust or believe in this staff or organization any longer. Worst ever. Joe, right now it's late in the season. Your money's kind of committed already. As far as like guys you want to avoid paying next year, let's see. By the way, Illuminor was a quad injury. I think he's holding out hope for Thursday, but I'm not encouraged. I mean, he was really laboring in a lot of pain. I would guess he wouldn't play in that game on a short week. That's what I would guess. So you might end up seeing now Chris Hubbard and Evan Neal again. Quite the tackle situation for the Giants. And who Azeez Ojulari had a toe, did not talk to him on a short week. Again, I think any guy who leaves a game like this, doesn't come back, probably expect that he can't play in the next game. DJ Davidson did come back after getting hurt. Micah McFadden played through that heel. Some of those guys to watch, injuries to watch on a short week. Again, be interested to see if any guys start tapping out and start showing up in the injury report out of nowhere. That'll be interesting to see. Let's see. We got upcoming free agents. Darius Slayton, Simmons, Locke, Van Roten, Gillen, Adoree Jackson. At this point, I guess there might be some incentives that exist in certain places, Joe, that you're trying to avoid paying out. But by and large, we're pretty late in the year here. But I will ask around on that information and try to bring you something more direct on, like, if there's a player or two who it makes sense for them to not play or sit down incentive-wise or whatever. I saw somebody report that was part of the reason that Drew Lock might not be playing as well, because he has incentives that could add to his contract. Thank you for the super chat there. Let's see. John says, just curious, the year Mara hired Gettleman, did he attempt at all to hire John Dorsey, or did Dorsey just choose the Browns? Mara should hire him. No, that was going to be a Gettleman hire the whole way. Really, the story behind that, I believe, is he was a protege of Ernie Accorsi. Accorsi ended up essentially, and he and the Giants ended up tabbing Jerry Reese and not Dave Gettleman the first time. So he, was close with Accorsi. That was a relationship that at that point it was kind of like, okay, I've been passed over. So when the time came for them to choose a new general manager, it became, okay, now it's his turn. We owe him this, as friends and as somebody who put in his time and felt like he was owed that and was part of the Giants family. And so that was kind of doing right by him and giving him as a, true Giant who had been with them for a while and who was friends with Ernie Accorsi, who had, gotten them helped get them to the promised land. That was kind of how that transpired there. So that's why it was Dave, all the way. Jay says, Pat, I get what you were saying about the team imploding. You saw it first. What do you say to all these people who say you are a media weasel when most are just towing the line and keeping their jobs? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think the best way to say it would be, I think the best way to say it, Jay, would be that if I was not sitting here and covering the team, they would still be this big of a disaster. And that would be the biggest point I would want to get across is, if I sat here and wasn't reporting on the Giants, I think that, they would be the same team, the same dysfunctional operation. And that's all I can say. I think, fans are allowed to believe what they want to believe. But like I said, I think this is a really good example of why it's important to try to always tell it like it is. Because when you tell it like it is, so if Jermaine Illuminor says there are guys not giving 100%, and I'm telling you everything's fine with the Giants, why would you believe me the next time I told you something about the Giants? That's how I feel, That's how I feel. I feel like, your integrity is on the line and your reliability as a reporter is on the line, and you have to be straight with people. And if you're not, I think it's very transparent and people won't trust what you say the next time. So, what I find usually is, as this goes for sometimes with sources too, or people in the league, sometimes people in the league don't necessarily believe that things could be as bad as I'm describing them. And then they either experience them themselves or they, it's like sometimes you have to bring a horse to drink, right? you have to, what's the saying? I forget the slogan. I'm like Ron Burgundy here, screwing up cliches. Bottom line is sometimes people need to experience it themselves before they know and before they trust or confirm. They need to confirm it for them before they believe what you're saying. And I think a lot of times people come back to me after they're critics like that, if that's what people are calling me or whatever. And I think eventually they come around. I do think that there's a segment of the fan base or people in the media who love to try to ostracize somebody like me who's trying to tell it like it is and being critical. And they try to put me on an island and mock me and make it personal and take personal shots. And then you always got to watch. Then they always end up 6 months later, a year later, they say that they always thought what I thought the whole time. But they don't give me credit for it. They just say, oh, yeah, it was always headed this way, Like you'll hear from people in January. The Giants were, they didn't want to make a change. But this year, going into this year, it was always going to be, pressure on Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen if they didn't turn it around. And I knew it was there. I just didn't think it would go there. It's like, okay, sure, whatever. We all remember who was saying it and who wasn't in August and September. Let's see. Todd says, hey, Pat, where do you think Daniel Jones signs? I think he signs in Minnesota. That's my guess. I gave you guys a list of teams on X the other day. That was based on reporting, not just – it wasn't like speculation on fits. That was based on reporting of where I think were possibilities. Obviously, there are other teams that have come out that I didn't have on that list, like the Ravens, et cetera. But the list I gave you guys included the Cowboys, the Vikings, the Niners, the Dolphins, the Eagles, and there were a few other teams I threw in there, the Raiders. But my pick, obviously the Niners look like they need help too. My pick is the Vikings based on the combination of all things. The combination of they don't have a quality backup or a sufficient backup, starter with an injury history, a coach who, if you're a quarterback, you would want to be coached by now, especially someone who has helped Darnold revitalize his career. If I'm Daniel Jones, I would want to be coached by Kevin O'Connell. And a team that's in contention and is going to be in the playoffs. So that's my guess, Minnesota. George says, I believe if the Giants had the right people in place, we would have been good this season. Todd says Giants should release Daboll and treat him poorly on the way out, just like they did to Daniel Jones. Well, here's the frustrating thing with the Giants is, like when I say Brian Daboll's on the hot seat, I get ostracized or criticized or people come after me or whatever it is. And then, like look at Ben McAdoo, Joe Judge, these guys who it's like the organization or people with the Giants stand behind them until they don't. And then they just want to decide when it's time to, to run them out. They don't want somebody like me setting the agenda or telling people what's actually happening. They want to do it on their own. But they run people out of here, they like to run people out of here on their own terms. D-Kid says, whether you realize it or not, the team and how they play are a direct reflection on the GM and head coach. Name me one example of a great GM and coach that ever had a team play like this. Exactly. Gary says, hi, Pat, you called it, fam. They should have gotten rid of Daboll and Joe after the Carolina game. Every team played hard today except the Giants. George says, this game is a microcosm of what Daniel Jones went through his career with the Giants. Got pounded in games. Don't think DeVito will last the whole season. Antonio says, Pat, do me the biggest favor and tell everyone in that locker room that nobody cares if you had a good practice. Like, what is the point of saying that? You just got embarrassed. It's a joke. Well, that's Daboll standing there at the podium said we had good practice all week. Obviously, you didn't. Right? Falls on deaf ears. By the way, how about Daniel Jones escaping Alcatraz? How about that? Daniel Jones escapes Alcatraz. Patrick Evans says, bring back Jerry Reese. Thanks for the response, says Jay Farries. If you were in charge of the Giants this offseason, what would you do? First call to Bill Belichick. I would look into, Wink Martindale and a possible reunion there. I agree with whoever brought that up earlier. I thought that was a really good point. Let's see. General manager, I'm not exactly sure yet. Definitely doing more digging on that front. Definitely, I'm not exactly sure yet on the general manager, but I do think Belichick has to be the first call. Ben Johnson, obviously a really interesting name. It's a shame Brian Flores is suing the Giants for allegedly screwing him in a head coaching search, because I would be interested in that. Let's see. Chris says, cook 'em, Pat. Bring in the toilet paper and disinfectant to clean up the shit show, says Lucas. Matt Smith says, Schrager said any reports on Dable being on the hot seat are erroneous, and he will be back next year. He seems to be pretty plugged in. What are your thoughts? That's fine if he wants to say that. I don't think that's the case. Locker room lost, says Steve Keys. Exactly. Dable can't call plays, says Barb. Dan says poverty franchise. Mike says you don't have a better opportunity to hit reset than this offseason. New GM and new coach and QB. 10 minutes. All right, thanks. AJ, what's up? Let's see. Matthew says McKinney intercepted a pass. Yeah, I saw that. Xavier McKinney. Another good player shown the door. Paulie says, Pat, you do great work as always. What pissed me off was Baker Mayfield making fun of Italians. He should apologize. And the big problem is Mara and his penny pitching never looking for a black athletic quarterback. Paulie, I don't think he was making fun of Italian Americans. I think he was making fun of the Giants being a sideshow and throwing this product out there. George says, Pat, you are the absolute best Giant reporter. Thank you. Thank you for saying that, George. That means a lot. Seriously, I'm not just saying that. Let's see. Steven says, why, Pat, would you sign a quarterback when it took only 6 starts to be done with him? I know it was a 2-year deal, but they put him in an impossible position. The only way he was going to succeed was 14-3. Thanks for always keeping it real with the Giants front office, says Johnny. You got it. Let's see. NYC says Baker was doing that for all the lost Giants. Exactly. Listen, he's friends with Saquon and with Sterling Shepard and these guys. That was a message from all of that. From all of those guys, no doubt. Let's see. Jacob, great to see you. Where's the piano? I don't have the fake background up, man. Do you like that? Maybe I should use it every week. Let's see. Jacob says, am I crazy to think this draft class saves Joe Shane's ass? What about it? They're all playing, and it's not helping the team. Tyrone Tracy Jr. is the one guy who I'm sitting there like, okay, I like that pick, but now he's hitting hard times too. Yes, I do think there's a chance Dable's gone in season and Joe after it. Yeah, the players have, they did not play their hardest today. I think that's a fair thing to say. And it's an indictment on everything about what they doubt from this team and this program and this regime. Astro Doc says this modern NFL has passed Mara by. Nothing will change until the team gets sold. What won't happen in my lifetime unless Steve Cohen is a Giants fan. Fire whoever's in charge, Bommy says. It's that simple. Hunter wants them all gone. Any player that quits should be gone, says Barbara. Let's see. David says, would you make a Trevor Lawrence trade? I don't know if that's the answer. Betch says, talk, Pat, talk. Jacob says, do you think we go get Higgins to get him with Nabers and Wan'Dale would be a lot of weapons for a rookie quarterback? Definitely need more weapons. Roster is so far away, says Evan. So many missing pieces, lack of talent, poor coaching. Undefined says, Pat, you should do an investigative report on who at the Giants is paying ESPN and others to cover for the coach and GM and blame Jones. Well, this is what I'm saying. I'm telling you this right now. The Giants and teams and NFL and all these places, anybody who comes after a reporter like me, it's a way to try to change the conversation and take the target off of the back of what's really happening, which is the bad football, the team, the bad personnel decisions. And when I'm telling you guys what I believe is the truth about the Giants and about the NFL and about whatever NFL team I'm talking about or player situation, there are forces at work trying to make you believe otherwise. There are people, whether, if I have sources in the Giants organization, there's other sources in that organization, sharing different versions or their versions of the truth or their own spin. And that happens in this business all over the place. And what cracks me up is the perception and the belief of some people that somebody like me is trying to drive an agenda through for personal reasons, when it's the exact opposite, that there's so much stronger forces at work outside of me and people I'm talking to. There are so many stronger forces at work trying to convince you, the fans, of a different reality than what is actually going on in certain situations. All right, let's see. Steven says, I was upset with you when you called for Daboll's job, but you are right. They need to go. I want to see Kafka and Rossetti the rest of the season. I agree on Rossetti. I saw a team that flat out was giving up. Daboll has lost the team. Dan says, nobody left for Daboll to hide behind now that Jones is gone. Fired Wink, stripped Jones, Kafka play calling, bench cut Jones. Nobody left to blame. Yeah, I also did not like Kafka and Shea Tierney really not taking accountability when we were talking to them after the Daniel Jones situation this week. Tierney saying too early to talk about why the Daniel Jones development didn't progress properly. He's one of the people who are in charge of that. Asked him if he was going to do play calling down the stretch. He said, no, I've never done play calling. We know that's not true. He did it last season in the second half at Dallas. So what was that? And then Kafka saying, yeah, I'll talk about Tampa Bay. I'm not going to talk about Daniel Jones. That's Daboll's purview. I mean, come on. Lowest scoring team in the league. Jonathan says, Steve Cohen or Hal Steinbrenner, please buy the Giants. Patrick Evans says, we keep blaming coaches and GMs. This organization has been bad for a while. We keep getting rid of coaches until they get rid of our good players, which affects the culture. Yeah, no, I mean, I think what you're talking about is ownership and the way that they make hiring decisions, who they bring in, the hires they make. That all goes to show and point to, really the way that it operates. And also, I say this all the time. I've said this for a while. I said this when I first got on the beat. One of the first major things I noticed about the Giants was they do not properly evaluate their own team. They do not properly evaluate themselves. They look at themselves and they over-evaluate their own players, their own draft picks, their own evaluations, their own coaches. And meanwhile, when they have massive problems, they spend just as much time trying to airbrush them in the public eye as they do actually trying to fix them. And so that is just running in place when it comes to trying to improve. So I want to thank, first of all, Chris, Steve, DH, GM, Daniel, Novice, Gerald, Jim, Most Illest, John, Patrick, especially with the $50 on that super chat, Keith, No Mets, Novice, Kyle, Paulo, Patrick, Joey B, John, Jay Farries, Patrick, Jay Farries again, Jonathan, and Patrick Evans to close us out. All of those super chats, really appreciate that, you guys supporting our channel. Can't thank you enough. We are brought to you here by State 98 Coffee, Boom Chaga, and MyBookie. Remember, Pat's picks on MyBookie. Go to the link in your social media profile on my X account, P Leonard NYDN, or on my Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Threads, whatever. And Use the promo code PATSPICK. You'll get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000. Why is this important? You'll get a $10 casino chip, by the way, in their casino as well. This is important because, ready? 3-0 on my Pats picks this week. A perfect 3-0. Making you money on my bookie. Let's go. And this is the best way to support us. The super chats, the super stickers. By the way, everyone who's here, please hit the like button here while we are live. That really helps improve engagement and continues to build the channel. Big numbers today. You guys turning out to watch and to talk about the Giants locker room and takeaways from what we saw here. But if you support on my bookie, Boom Chaga and Estate 98, that is the best way to keep growing us and what we are doing here. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. Put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. Personally, felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower inflammation, reduce lower cholesterol, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. BoomChaga.com today. Go there, use the Talkin Ball 25 promo code, and you'll get a 20% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at BoomChaga.com. You can also click the QR code on your screen right here. Click on there. Go get some Boom Chaga today. And brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. Estate 98 Coffee is a specialty coffee concentrate that's perfect for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 or iced or hot coffee. Great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/Talkin Ball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. That's going to be all for Talkin Ball Live postgame with Pat Leonard today. We will be back this week. Obviously, they play Thursday against the Cowboys. Hopefully, we'll be able to deliver a preview edition. Again, give you the latest from inside the Giants. We'll get in the locker room on Tuesday, be able to tell you what's happening with the team, bring it to you first here from the New York Daily News and the Believe Network here on Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. I see Authentic down there. Authentic's always here, always watching. Authentic's the man. Go watch and listen to everything Authentic does. Amazing content. I know I keep saying we're going to get our next creator series going. Promise that's coming soon. And if you haven't caught it already, go watch ours earlier this season with Authentic. I think that was good. A lot of prescient comments from both of us there about where this is headed and problems we have with the current operation. What else did I have to say about you guys? Well, I'm just really appreciative of the community we've built here and everything you guys are always doing to help promote me on social media and to encourage people out there to come join us and hear what we're doing. I'm going to close this by trying to throw out some positives because obviously it's been a lot of frustration and downers talking here. So here are my positives from today. Micah McFadden played his butt off. Tommy DeVito finished the game despite getting bludgeoned all over the place during the game. Drew Lock stayed ready, went in, completed his only pass, despite being humiliated and passed over this week in the decision to go right to DeVito instead of to Daniel Jones. Let's see. Tyler Nubin had a nice pass breakup on a third down to force a punt while guarding Mike Evans. Bobby Okereke played better than he has, was more active, it appeared, than he has been. Obviously, it's hard to give a lot of credit out because the Giants played so poorly. But I'm trying to do my best, trying to be Mr. Brightside here. And I also will say, there's players in there who are accountable. I really like Chris Manhertz, he's a veteran, hard worker, lunch pail guy. You need more people like that in your locker room and on your team. And so with that, I'll say, first of all, happy Thanksgiving. If I don't see you guys before now, if you don't come out to Talkin Ball Live post game on Thanksgiving, I'm sure you will. But if you're not there, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Second, I probably will do a live to preview the Dallas Cowboys game upcoming on Thanksgiving in Arlington. So hopefully see you guys there. And thirdly, I think my overall takeaway here is I think this is the end for Shane and Dable. I just think it's a matter of when. That's my opinion. No one's telling me that. That's just my opinion. And I think it's going to keep getting worse, and I think that is why, along with all the things that you saw on the field and all the comments you heard in the locker room. It's bad. It's as bad as it's been in a long time, and it's only going to keep getting worse. I think that the biggest takeaway you should bring from our Talkin Ball post-game live here is this was a statement by the players that they don't see the direction here. This was their play getting worse, being called soft rampantly, and having your top offensive player call out the head coach, and having a starter on your offensive line saying that guys aren't playing with 100% effort. This is as bad as it gets, and to have confidence in the leaders who enable and have built this lack of culture, that requires a look in the mirror from ownership on down. I think it's ridiculous we haven't heard from the Tisch family, and I think that ultimately what it comes down to is the most accurate way to describe it is, do the Giants want to make changes here with this regime? No, they haven't wanted to. But do I think they will? Yes, I do think they will. Early odds have the Cowboys as 3.5-point favorites on Thanksgiving. America will be subjected to Giants-Dallas in the middle game on Thanksgiving. You have Bears at Lions, Giants at Dallas, Miami at Green Bay. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting. Love the community we have here with Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard here on the Believe Network and on the YouTube channel. And I'll just pick this one out as on our way out. Ben says, Pat, you are on a generational run. Keep it up. Ben calling me generational, putting me in the company of a Saquon Barkley. I'll take it. Thank you so much. It's always nice to be right and to be appreciated when you are, because all I'm trying to do is bring the most accurate information and insight and analysis to you guys. Thanks so much. Take care. See you soon. And go over to the New York Daily News website now and read my column and takeaways, as well as Peter Splendorio's sidebars and stories on this game from MetLife Stadium. See you guys later.